but I was getting to the point where I needed to up my career, like take a step further, or I needed to be able to do writing more seriously. I was just like feeling kind of stuck. My wife was like, "Hey, how about you go part-time at your job?" I'm like, "Okay, it's really scary, but okay." So she pushed me to do that, which I'm really grateful for. And then, I think it was a year later, essentially, I was able to go full-time. She had financial stability for us, so that was a huge factor. Since then, things have built, and we're kind of living on my income now. You have to do something, or nobody's going to be able to know about your books, right? That's the way of discovery. So commit yourself as much as you can to one avenue at a time. Build that up, become proficient at it, start getting a following there. Then you can add stuff on top of that.
Friends, welcome back to the Pint and Portal Author Podcast. I am Herman Stornagel, your host, and if you're an author who has been dreaming about turning your love of writing into a full-time career, this is an episode you're going to want to pay attention to. My guest today is fantasy author Josiah Rosell, who you might better know as JDL Rosell. Josiah has been publishing since 2016, but it wasn't until 2021 that he took the leap from a full-time corporate day job to writing novels full-time. He now has 20 books out across multiple series, including the book that started it all, The Legend of Tall. You might also know The Last Ranger, which has blown up on social media. Through these books and his writing, he has built a career that sustains his family. During this conversation, we talk about what it actually looked like for him to go from writing on the side to becoming full-time. And like so many of my other guests, it only took one book and one decision to make that happen. Then we learn what he did to build on top of that in order to turn that full-time business into a sustainable model to keep him going and to keep him writing. Today's episode, we dig deep into Facebook ads. You'll hear about his overall strategy, as well as some of the details of his ads, his campaigns, and how he maximizes his ad spend to bring the right readers to his books. So, buckle in, get ready for another author who has turned their love of writing into a successful career. This is a fantastic conversation. I hope that you love it as much as I did. Before we get into today's conversation, I just want to take a minute to talk to you about getting paid and paying for services as an author. If you've published a book, you know that there are a number of services involved that you have to pay for. And those services, if you're self-published, don't all come from the same place. For example, I recently had to pay for my cover designer in US dollars, for my map in British pounds, and for my artwork in euros. And guess what? I'm Canadian, so my main bank account is in Canadian dollars. Never mind that I get paid from Amazon in pounds, euros, US dollars, Canadian dollars, all depending on where the reader lives, which, don't get me wrong, is an amazing problem to have. I absolutely love that my books are being purchased around the world. But guess what? If you're converting currencies either to or from a service member, you're losing money on fees, both to your bank, to the credit card issuer, to PayPal, to whoever you might be paying or receiving payments from. That's why I use a service called Wise. Wise is one of the sponsors of today's show, but I have been using Wise for years. Because Wise is a service that is designed specifically for people who deal with international payments. Whether you're receiving payments or paying for service in currencies other than your own, Wise has the best exchange rates that I've been able to find on the market. You can use Wise to send international transfers to up to 80 different countries directly from one bank account to another. So when I had my map designed, I paid in euros using Wise. For being a listener of the show, you'll get a free international transfer of up to 800 Canadian dollars. And at today's rate, that's just over 550 US dollars. So please click on the description in the comments below or head to www.pintandportal.com/deals to get started. Thank you so much. And now let's get on with the interview. All right. Well, Josiah Rosell, also known as JDL Rosell for those who are fans of fantasy. Welcome here, Josiah. I am so happy to have you here and be able to chat with you on the podcast today.
Thanks, Herman. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you are so welcome. And I am so excited to have you here today. We're going to talk a little bit about your author career and your journey to get you to the point where you're at now and everything you've done to kind of build up a couple of fantasy series, as well as I know you've had some success with Kickstarter. You've had some success on social media. I know we've chatted on social media before, but this is the first chance that we've gotten to talk one-on-one like this. So I'm really excited because I've been meaning to reach out to you for quite some time, especially, as I had the previous iteration of the podcast with the greatest podcast in the multiverse. But here we are with the Pint and Portal podcast. We're making it happen. So welcome here.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, we've obviously communicated enough that I got your book
wonderful.
here. Oh, it's not focusing. There it is.
There we go. Yeah. And you've got the foil edition too, which is awesome. Yeah. So yeah, and I meant to grab your books, but they're sitting on the shelf. But I was so happy to dig into them.
I remember. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So Josiah, why don't you just kind of kick us off and just tell us a little bit about what made you decide to pursue writing as a full-time career? And how did you get to that point? Like, what was it? Because I know a lot of our listeners are writers, probably most of our listeners are writers. So they, they've maybe written a book or two, or maybe they've written 10, but they haven't quite got to the point where they are maybe as successful as they want to be, or are able to, take a step back and write full time. So what point were you at where you were able to make that decision, and what led up to that?
Yeah. So I've been publishing since 2016, been writing essentially since my senior year in college, at least novel writing, been writing much longer than that. Basically, since I was 12, I guess, was when I first started seriously writing. So I was in, I don't know, in Canada, do you have like enhanced learning programs in elementary school?
There are similar programs depending on the school you're at and depending kind of if you're in a big center. I grew up in a really small town, so we didn't have that sort of thing. But there were, different, not in elementary school and high school, there were different levels of courses that you took. But yeah, early on, you would have had to have been in a bigger center than we were. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it was through one of those kind of programs that I did. They I don't remember how this even led up to it, but they were like, hey, you want to bind a little book, have your own little book. So that's when I wrote my first one.
That's awesome.
It was like a novella length and stuff like that.
Really cool.
It's been a lifelong dream, as it is for a lot of us. So that's why I started seriously trying to write a novel in college when I was studying English and stuff like that. And then, published my first one, which was my graduate thesis. In 2016. I've since unpublished that because I'm just not going to complete the series. So it feels like a false promise,
Right.
And,
yeah.
I had some things to improve on as well. So
totally.
As we all do.
Yeah.
So that's where it sort of my publishing journey began.
Mm-hmm.
I tried getting it traditionally published, but didn't have any bites at that point.
Okay.
But, indie publishing was really getting going about that time. There was some people finding a lot of success. So I was like, okay, I might as well try it. I don't want to just wait around and do nothing with this novel. So I published it myself. And since then, I've really grown to love indie publishing. I have some pieces, mostly in audio, that are with traditional publishing, essentially. Podium Entertainment does my audio. But mostly I'm just indie. And as you said, do a lot of Kickstarter these days and a lot of Amazon publishing as well.
Right. So you went, so you did a master's of creative writing or master's of arts with a writing focus. And then you went right into publishing right out of university.
So I had a full-time gig for sure.
Okay.
During, so I graduated in 2014, 15 from college and grad school. And then until about 2021, I was doing it writing on the side while I had full time. And I was
so you're doing the full time day job basically for 5 years before you pivoted into doing the full time writing. That's great.
Yep.
And we were talking before the show. I've had probably about 60 interviews now or so. I think you're the first person that I've talked to that started in, a writing degree and then actually followed through on that without taking a huge detour in between.
Yeah.
Because like there's definitely been a few that had, done the writing degree. I had an English degree myself, but most of us seem to take a hard right turn after we graduate. And, and
Sure.
maybe it's partially my age too, because when I graduated, like indie publishing wasn't even a dream in anybody's eye unless you printed 2,000 books and stored them in your garage kind of thing. So,
Right.
yeah, so typically the stories that I hear, the people that do go for a writing degree or an English degree, whichever flavor you go for, they're like, yeah, after university, because I went into banking after that, and I did that for, 6 or 7 years, and then into web design. So, yeah, so you're the first one that I've heard that has gone through that process and then come out the other side actually, pursuing that, even though you had to, kind of do the full-time job in between. I don't know if it was writing related or not, but yeah. So that's really interesting. So now, where were you at that point in 2021 where you decided that you could pivot from writing on the side to it being your full-time career?
Yeah. So before, what I was doing for the day job was corporate trainings, essentially. So like the boring courses you have to take is for compliance and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
I
Fun
got
stuff.
the
I did
pleasure
lots
of
of those in
creating
banking.
those. Oh, yes. See? Yeah. We had the banking sector locked down, So that's what I was doing. It did involve a decent amount of writing, but not super creative writing, right? A
For
lot
sure.
more
Yeah.
editing.
Technical. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, and I was in that. I didn't mind it, and I had great people that I worked with, but I was about that 2021 point, getting to the point where I needed to up my career, like take a step further, or I
Yeah.
needed to be able to do writing more seriously. I
Okay.
was just like feeling kind of stuck. So
Yeah.
I was considering going back to grad school for instructional design, which you do is like the upper level of the course design. You
Right.
get to do a
Okay.
little bit more interesting stuff.
Right.
So I was on the verge of that. But then
Mhm.
2020 is when I released my first in my Legend of Tall series. And that's what really made me able to go full time.
Right. Okay.
So when I released that, it took about 6 months, and then the second book I almost had ready to go.
Nice.
And then I released that as well. And those two books together were enough that my wife was like, hey, how about you go part-time at your job? I'm like, okay, it's really scary, but okay.
Yeah.
So she pushed me to do that, which I'm
Nice.
really grateful for.
Yeah.
And then, I think it was a year later, essentially, I was able to go full-time.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, her being a nurse at that time really enabled, she had financial stability for us. So
Yeah.
that was a huge factor in being able to go full time, because it was
Definitely a
not
little bit of cushion there.
Right. Yeah. Like we could live off of her salary if everything tanked. But
Right.
fortunately, since then, things have built, and we're
Yeah.
kind of living on my income now. So
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Yeah, so that wasn't your first published book. You had other
No.
ones published that are all the
Yes.
ones you published before that one pulled out of circulation now. So that's your first one that's still out there.
No. Yeah. So I have, what did I do before that? I did Godslayer Rising, which is my lit RPG trilogy. I think I finished those up, or was close to it, before I released Legend of Tall. And then I had also released, I think, most of the Famine Cycle, which is my first epic fantasy series,
Right.
other than the one I unpublished. So I had released 2 books in that before I released the first Legend of Tall. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So obviously I wasn't aware of what your publishing order was. So I apologize for not researching that
I
better
have
before
20
we chatted.
books now.
I
It's
know,
a
right?
lot.
I'm like, I know I've seen most of your books, but the orders I can't keep straight for most authors. So yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So Legend of Tall. So what was it about that book? How was it was it how you set up the promotion of the book, or what was it about it? Do you think that was the turning point for you?
Yeah, so there was a couple things. I wrote it to be more Tolkien-esque. So in a world with sort of the familiar fantasy races, tropes. I was playing a lot with tropes, essentially, in that series, trying to use things that were both familiar, but do them in a different way. So, which tends to be enjoyable for readers. And then, yeah, having it be Tolkien-esque gave me a marketing angle to be like, if you enjoy Lord of the Rings, you can enjoy this, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
But also the case for Name of the Wind, which was one of the big inspirations for it.
Okay.
So Name of the Wind, you see some of Old Quoth, but then mostly it's a coming-of-age story. I wanted to do the retired hero reversal of that, but still explore sort of like a storied legend, and that be very relevant to the story.
Right. That's really cool. So how do I phrase this? How intentional were you with how you set that up as far as the tropes and that in a way that was different from maybe your previous books?
Yeah, I mean, very intentional because I was seeing what was working in like in indie publishing, what was most popular. And I was like, well,
Mm.
I could do something that's a little bit more maybe accessible.
Hmm.
So lit RPG was one attempt at that because I was like, oh, lit RPG is really hot. Maybe let me write something. I enjoy video games. Let me write something in that.
Yeah.
I didn't quite read enough lit RPG nor enjoy enough lit RPG to do a good job.
Hmm.
I think it's an okay series, and the people who've read it have liked it, but I can understand why it didn't like blow up, right?
Right.
So, and then for the famine cycle, it's really enjoy it. I think it's in some ways more creative than Legend of Sol, if I'm allowed to say
Okay.
that about my books.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
But it didn't have sort of like a good marketing angle in the sense of what do you hook onto? There was not so much in the way of tropes. The short of it is there's like a fantasy private investigator in ancient Rome, and she's trying to uncover mysteries that eventually lead to sort of like a god trying to destroy the world, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
So I
Which sounds
first
crazy interesting, right? But
thank you.
not typical though, right? Like not a typical
Right.
plot line.
Right.
So
Like what's similar to that I can hang my marketing on. Like
right,
it's made it difficult to sell.
for sure.
So
So,
yeah.
but I think I think that's an interesting point though, because I think as writers, especially new writers, I've heard a lot of writers talk about how they're worried about people stealing their ideas because they have this really
Yeah.
unique idea
Yeah.
that, is maybe very interesting, but like nothing else that's out there, which makes it a little harder to sell. So do you think, you know, so basically you were looking at the market and what was familiar and trying to do something a little bit different, not completely different than what was currently selling, right? Yeah.
I think Legend of Tall did a pretty okay job with that. I think at times I maybe adhered too closely to sort of like a Tolkien-esque world, which is why in my next series, so I had another series, the Rune War Saga, but that I started writing that technically before any of this. It was my
Okay.
technical first novel. But so that's a whole other story. But the next
Yeah.
one that I wrote intentionally after Legend of Tall was Ranger of the Titan Wilds, which coheres on or hangs on this sort of fantasy ranger trope, right?
Hmm.
The world itself is very different and has some corollaries to the real world, but really the trope angle was just the ranger. Everything else was essentially different. So
Right.
that I think was a better balance for me between the marketing sort of angle, like I could hang things on this, but
Yes.
also satisfying like my creativity.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think, that's the series that I think that I first heard of yours because it was on TikTok, which I
Yeah.
think you had even though you had that one element, you hooked that element quite well through your TikTok videos and reels where you only have a few seconds to capture somebody's attention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a difficult medium still, I think. But yeah, I've had a few videos that have done well there. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how did you get the word out, I guess, about Legend of Tall? That was it just, because obviously there's lots of epic fantasy, if you like Lord of the Rings, you like those types of books out there. What was it, do you think, that you did initially with that, in that first 6 months that enabled it to be kind of the turning point for you?
Yeah, so a lot of it came down to the cover art, which I was very nitpicky on.
Hmm.
Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
even more so than I have been in a lot of my books since. But I had a very particular idea of what I wanted it to look like. I wanted those characters to sort of be like stepping out towards you, right?
Mm.
And how the
Right.
topography interacts with that kind of behind it.
Right. Okay.
I think it was The Crafter's Son was the book. I really liked its art, and I believe that's the same artist that I went with, Renee
Nice. Yeah.
Agner.
Okay.
And I've worked with him, I think, on 10 books now at this point.
Nice.
So I really like his art and his style. But yeah, so like working with Renee on that, we went through a lot of iterations before sort of matched the vision in my head. And I think that, yeah, the cover really sold a lot of people. And then it was just 2020 times. It was June of 2020. Right. There weren't a lot of books being released. Traditional publishing was sort of shut down. And so there was this gap in the market that I just threw out my novel and threw some Facebook ads at it, and it was able to, find an audience then.
Nice. Yeah, I think especially for epic fantasy around that time, there was a bit of a gap because that's about the same time like Ryan Cahill launched his
so he
books.
Was, I believe, 2021.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay.
Maybe it was early 2021, but he actually chatted with me early on before Of Blood and Fire had actually found success, just kind of in like we, like picked each other's brains about what we were doing. Obviously, he found some things that worked a bit better for him than I have. So it was right about that same time when still in 2021 there was that gap.
Right. Yeah. Kind of that. Yeah. So that's probably within a year still. That timeline. I do remember because that's kind of around the same time I started writing as well, and I do remember just seeing some of the conversations, especially where there was a bit of a gap in epic fantasy that publishers weren't willing to take a risk on longer books from unknown authors. So indie publishing kind of became a way for readers to pick up those books that maybe publishers weren't willing to take a chance on. But your books aren't, and correct me if I'm wrong, Legend of Tall is not a super long book though. Like it's not an 800
not the first
page.
One. Yeah. Especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 100,000 words or less. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but by that point, you had kind of decided you were going the indie publishing route anyway, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. I was sort of, especially at that point, tired of waiting around, right? I wanted to find and like be the author of my success, for, a tropey phrase. But yeah, so that indie publishing still fits me better than the traditional model.
Yeah. Yeah. So you basically, for that book, at least you kind of looked at what you were interested in writing, where things were out on the market, and then you just decided you were going to make the best cover you could and use that as your promotional piece, as well as the hook of, if you like Lord of the Rings, you're going to like this type of book.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you were off to the races from there.
Yep. So, and it wasn't like I just put it up on Amazon and did nothing, right? I was trying to push it in any way I could. I think Facebook ads was the way that was most successful for me though.
Okay. Yeah.
At its heyday, like when I first released, I had an ad. I think I was running close to $100 a day. So it was especially at that time, it was a lot for me. I think it's a decent amount in general, but it was like I was not spending nearly that much before that. And it was getting, I think, somewhere in the like 6 cents per click. So, and it was just, I think it was just incredible. The book cover or the cover art, So it was like the perfect sort of ad to be able to push you right into getting the book.
Yeah, that's incredible. So let's talk a little bit about Facebook ads, because I know you've said that's kind of been a big part of your strategy. It was a big part of your strategy then. Is it still a big part of what you're doing now?
Absolutely, yeah. Basically, every sort of release I have, I run Facebook ads to some extent. And usually, on a daily basis, right at this very moment, I scaled back something I had been doing. But before that, I was doing $100 a day in Facebook ads, just like normally.
Right.
So, and right now it's, I think, still 50s or something like that.
So a fair amount of.
Yeah.
So now I know, so a lot of people have said, Facebook ads don't work anymore because they're either too expensive or too, the algorithm has changed, so they're not willing to show your stuff as much, but you're still finding that there's value there.
Yeah. And it comes and goes, and I'm not always sure why it comes and goes, but so I've started sort of doing sort of a cycling method. So this can be cycling between different series. So the two series that I tend to push are Legend of Tall and Ranger of the Titan Wilds, since they sell the best. So I'll have different times of focusing on each of those, whether that's around a sale or just in general, just ramping up spend, seeing if I can try some new ideas. So that sort of crop rotation method seems to help Facebook a little bit so that it doesn't get the same tired audience and it can sort of refresh itself. Also, doing different countries has helped do this similar sort of thing. So I'll cycle through pushing the US for a bit, or I'll push UK, or occasionally I'll do Australia and Canada, but they don't sell as well for me on Facebook, especially. So, but yeah.
Yeah. When you realize that, Canada has a smaller population than all of California, than California does, you kind of realize the scale of market difference that you're dealing with, right? So, because I found that too. You can get a cheap cost per click if you're targeting Canada, but you're not making as many clicks either, so it makes it difficult. I guess digging into your Facebook ads a bit. So I think there's kind of two things that I hear when authors are talking about Facebook ads, or they're worried about running Facebook ads. Either they think that they should just be able to set up one ad and let it run forever and ever, and it's going to do just fine. Or they're worried that they're going to have to go in and fiddle with it for 5 hours a day to try to make it work.
Sure, yeah.
I know you said you kind of cycle through different focuses per whatever time frame that is, but how often are you, or how much time, I guess, are you spending on Facebook ads?
Yeah, so I basically check weekly and do things weekly at this point. There was a time period when I was doing things daily for way too long, but honestly, it becomes counterproductive at a certain point. So, I mean, if you're just starting, I would suggest, maybe every couple days you check in, maybe not take actions, but like, tinker around and see if you can come up with new ideas. And that can be helpful at one point, but you do eventually need to, and probably pretty soon, not mess with them too much, because they need time to, well, first of all, get data, because you need good data to be able to make good decisions on what ad is working and what's not. You have to be comfortable with spending that money, not knowing if you're getting the success or not. So like each ad I try, I'll spend, anywhere from $5 to $10 a day on it. And then for about, a week, I'm doing that, not knowing the results of that ad. Yeah, I mean, because how can you know? Because I'm using Amazon attribution links. It takes 2 days at least to settle any sort of sales data. Before that time, you can't even know. Even if you try and check it at that point, you could check it at that point, you wouldn't really have enough data to know if it's a good ad or not. So giving it about a week, I have about 5 days of data. That's enough for me to make a decision on, I know this ad is getting sales or not. I'm going to turn it off or keep it going.
Okay. Yeah. So are you running, I guess, a couple of technical questions. Are you doing Kindle Unlimited with your ebooks?
Yes, for almost all of them.
Okay.
The Famine Cycle is the only series I've tried taking wide. I haven't put enough resources behind it, so it's not, it's not doing much. But yeah mostly KU.
Okay, so you're running your ads directly to Amazon. You're not linking them to your website to collect data or anything. You're just going direct click to Amazon.
Correct. Yeah, I have tried the sort of landing page method. And some people have said they found some success. For me, I haven't found success doing that, and it's not worth the extra steps. It just takes so much more time to do it that way.
Right. Yeah, and if your only ebook source is on Amazon anyway, then there's not really as much of a. I've seen, my Facebook ad success has been horrendous, but the most success I've had is sending them direct to my site, because if they buy direct, then I get a bigger percentage. Right, because I'm not exclusive with Amazon, so I'm getting the smaller percentage there anyway. So, but yeah, it's been limited. So so that was my question, I guess, first of all, because the thing I do like about running Facebook ads to my website is that they hit my site, right? And now I know,
yes,
because I'm using Shopify and I've got the Facebook pixel, so my site knows now that person is someone interested in my website, and Facebook can figure out similar people who might like my book to serve my ad to.
Totally.
That obviously has not worked for me.
No.
But, I do like that idea. But I'm glad to hear that sending it to Amazon has worked just as well. Now, obviously, you're able to get page reads and you're able to get sales as well doing that. And that's why you need that extra time, because people might not start reading the first day they buy it anyway. So you're going to get that read through later.
Right. Yeah. So there's that factor, and just for how long it takes for the reads to register. Right. In the system.
For sure.
But so do you mind? I wanted to ask you about the direct ads a little bit, because
please do.
I've also done some experimentation. I had a Shopify at one point. I probably will go back to it, but I didn't like spending the $40 monthly.
Yes.
Maybe it's more now, but the 40 monthly was
Well,
like,
it's about that.
okay, cool. I was just like, yeah, 400 a year. Like, what am I getting? Or 500 a year? What am I getting out of this?
Yeah.
So I have one on my website, like Squarespace, which is just included with it.
Right.
But like, it's not as sleek of a setup and easy
Sure.
as Shopify.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I've tried running ads there and I've had some success, but like not profitable, right?
You're right. Right.
So it's a tough business.
It is. Yeah. I mean, and if you're in Kindle Unlimited, you're not able to have your ebook on your website anyway. So, I use Shopify. I have it hooked up to BookFunnel for my ebooks, which is,
Nice.
I mean, it's great. So someone buys it, it auto sends it. The main reason I went with Shopify is because BookVault has a plugin to direct print. So someone
That's right.
buys
Yeah.
it and BookVault prints it and ships it. It's I have to click a button to like say, yeah, please do this, but it's so seamless otherwise that, that's the main reason I'm on Shopify, especially because I'm in Canada and shipping rates here are horrendous, that for me to ship signed copies or even unsigned, it's not worth it for me to ship unsigned copies for one. So, but I wanted to give readers a way to buy from me direct, even if they weren't signed copies. So it's made it a lot easier. So I do discount the book a little bit on my site just to offset the shipping a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's hard to beat free shipping.
Yeah.
But it is an option that people don't have to buy from Amazon at least.
Yeah. That is tough. Why is Canada shipping so expensive? Like just shipping it across the border, it's so much more expensive than you think.
I know. I think it's just because I'm sure it's probably because of our population density, so spread out
true.
that it takes so much more effort. And from what I understand, the US postal rates are subsidized, is my understanding as well.
I think so.
Especially, Amazon, obviously, I don't know how they get even in Canada, it's free shipping. I don't know how they get the deal that they get, but I'm sure they've worked something crazy out for
scheming
economic benefit or whatever. Yeah, right. So that's the only thing I can come up with it because our postal service loses money every year. And so I don't know, even with the crazy shipping rates, why that is. There's different theories out there that I won't get into, but
yeah, it's fair. We're verging into politics here. So
yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah,
verging away.
Yeah, how far down the rabbit hole you want to go there, but yeah, I don't know. I wish that they could get that sorted out, but otherwise, yeah, it's for me, it's paid for the cost, especially the biggest thing is. Once I get to the point where I am able to devote some of my energy into advertising, audiobooks direct from my website are going to be a game changer. I'm going to talk a little bit with Andy Peliquin about this because I know he's doing it as well. But
nice.
What do you make on an audiobook on Audible? Like a couple bucks maybe?
Yeah, it's less than I make for ebooks usually.
Yeah, and you can sell that same audiobook on your website if you're not exclusive to Amazon for still cheaper than one credit and make 4 times as much, right, as the author because you're getting 99% of it instead of 20% or whatever Audible is paying us these days.
It's a sweet deal.
Yeah, so even if I have to put a little advertising money into that, that's kind of the direction I would like to go with my Facebook ads, but I just haven't had the time yet to invest in learning about them. So me asking you these questions is very helpful for that.
Same here. Yeah, Andy will be a good guy to talk to, especially since he's in Canada as well and doing a lot of physical shipping, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I know. Yeah, I know he's got stuff working out for that. But for you, so like the follow up to my question about how much time you're giving it is let's say you go in and you set up your ad, you hit and Facebook approves it. How long do you give it until you know that ad is working for you or not?
I give it that week. Like if it's a sales period or like a launch period when I'm looking at my ads, maybe more every 3 days than once a week, then if I see something is expensive cost per click, or maybe it's expensive cost per click and no recorded sales, I might be inclined to turn it off at that point. On a typical low spend daily, maintenance sort of ad schedule, I would wait that week. Just to see, because usually I'm doing 1 or 2 new iterations of ads a week. So I want to give that new iteration a fair chance. So yeah, and if you're starting out, you don't have to feel like you have to spend $10 a day or whatever on an ad, like you can even do as low as $2 a day and still get some decent data. It just might not be as robust as if you do $5 a day on that ad.
Right. And it might just take you a little bit longer to accumulate that same amount of information.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So now when you go in, are you just looking for your average cost per click, like to judge how well it's performing, especially if you're getting, because here's always the tricky part for me is I'll go in, okay, I'm getting a few sales. Is this coming from my Facebook ads? Is this coming from my Amazon ads? Is this coming from my TikTok video? Where are these sales coming from? So how do you kind of judge if a Facebook ad is actually working or not for you?
Yeah. So my number one reference point is, so do you use Amazon attribution links?
I do not. I know
that's your first thing.
Yeah. So I know about them. I just have not bothered to set them up. So maybe tell listeners who have not even heard of them, let us know what they are.
So I think it's a subsection in the Amazon ads dashboard, or maybe it's like adjacent to it. But essentially what you can do is make links, each unique links that you can then use on each ad. And those will then directly track what that ad is making over on Amazon as far as sales and page reads. Now, they are not perfect. They tend to underreport what is actually happening. But, there's reasons for that as well, not just like a faulty system. Say somebody goes over to your book page and they get a sample. They don't buy it. That's not going to be tracked. But if they read the sample 2 weeks after and then buy the book 2 weeks later, that would not be tracked because there's a 2-week attribution period.
Okay.
So the same for if they borrow it in KU and start reading it after that 2 weeks, none of those page reads count. So it's an imperfect sort of system for getting data, but I have these sort of metrics where I'm like, typically I want at least one sale per $10 just because of how big my series are. That tends to be profitable still. I would aim lower if you have fewer books in a series, more like maybe one sale per $5 spent or equivalent page reads. And if I'm hitting that target, then I might increase the spend on that ad, or at least just keep it going until it falls out of that metric, and then I'll cycle in a new ad or whatever.
Yeah. Some really good information there. And, to drill down a little bit on that, I guess is I've got 2 questions. So first, obviously, that you're getting more buys and reads because of that discrepancy. And I'm assuming you have at least a rough idea of how much that discrepancy is. But you figured out the one sale per $10, you figured out enough that your read through from book 1 into the rest of your books is going to cover that difference, because obviously you're not making $10 from book 1. To back up a little bit, if I have one book in a series, can I run Facebook ads and make it profitable, or
if you just have one book,
is it better to wait until I have a few books in one series to do that?
Right. So I think it's a catch-22. So if you don't advertise that book 1, then you'll not have enough visibility for the rest of the series to be very profitable. But if you won't really usually make a profit on one book, right? It's the very rare book that takes off and Amazon actually gives you that algo juice. So sort of the happy medium is that these days, Amazon seems to be favoring long-term sales over a period of time more than just sort of like the burst sales that we used to see back in the day when we started publishing a bit more. So that's in that way, like Jasmine Young is an example of somebody you can see. She has rocketed her series up at this point, but even though when it launched, it wasn't at the highest point.
Okay. Yeah.
And what she did was she has built up the sales since then and keeps it at that higher sales. And so now her series is selling like gangbusters.
Right.
So you can do sort of the slow publishing route these days and then ramp up that spend once you have 1 or 2, 3 books in the series, and that can still work.
Right.
So yeah, it just depends on what you're looking for.
So when you started, I guess, let's say with Legend of Tal, you said that you had run some Facebook ads for that book. I know your second book came out 6 months later, but so when you were running ads for that book one, were you seeing profit at that point, or were you just trying to get visibility to get people into your ecosystem?
Yeah, so at that point, the Blitz launch strategy was the strategy. And I think that was
Mm,
sort of the heyday of rapid release as well.
yeah, yeah,
Although it might have been like a year or two later that people started talking about it a lot. But I think that was probably the time period that it worked best.
yes,
But yes, so I did see profit on it, especially when I stopped running ads so much. But it's just because that's the only book of mine that have really gotten Amazon algorithm love.
okay,
So, and it was very apparent too. Like, so I was pushing the ads. It was, I think it maybe got to 4,000 or something in the store when I was pushing it. But then there was like this period in 2 weeks in, maybe it was 1 week in, I forget now. But then it rocketed up past 2,000 in the store. And it
yeah,
was by
nice,
nothing I was doing. It was just
really.
Amazon started pushing.
Amazon just picked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard that, if you start to get enough sales, Amazon sees that as this is a, obviously a book people are buying, they give it a little bit more organic boost behind whatever algorithms they have in their
Yep.
system as well.
Yep.
So how much of that is that still the case, do you think, that they'll do that if they see that? I know you mentioned things have changed where they're not looking at the 1 day boost, it's a long-term boost, but is that still something that you're seeing, that if you can get enough eyes on your book, maybe with paid means or other means, that they'll start to turn out sales a little bit more in your favor?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've heard of launch day or like, from the get-go, something taking off and Amazon favoring it. I haven't heard about it lately, but I'm not in those sort of hot genres like romantasy, cozy
Right.
fantasy even, but lit RPG would obviously be another big one. So
Hmm.
in those genres, maybe it's quite possible it does that still. But
Yeah.
in epic fantasy, you're gonna probably struggle to get
Yeah.
that Amazon algorithm.
Yeah. They like to promote the Brandon Sandersons and some of the
Sure.
more traditional pubs in the space, right?
Yeah, and to that
Yeah.
point, if you have an audience and getting consistent sales, I think Amazon will push you still for sure.
Hmm.
And you like I cited Jasmine, we've seen Ryan obviously as well, see
Yeah.
a lot of success. So
Right.
if you have like find an audience, Amazon, yeah, will help you do more. But I think it's less than it used to be, less
Hmm.
drastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if, like you said, they're not as focused on the burst. And you see that, people would, ramp up into the top of the charts for a day, and then their book bub would be over and they'd fall right back down. You'd never see them again. They're
Yep.
more concerned if you're selling well over time rather than because of a one-time promo.
Yep. Yep.
With the rankings at least. So now you also mentioned, we talked about your dollar per sale spent on Facebook.
Yeah.
So obviously you have a good sense of your read through from book one into book 4 or 5 by the time you do that calculation to figure out what's going to be worthwhile for your ad spend. So what do how do you factor that in, I guess, and how do you know that your readers are you doing anything in particular to bring readers along into book 2? Like have you ever
Yeah.
seen a drop off from one book to the next and know that you've needed to change something? Or
Hmm.
is there something, that you're doing in order to make sure you're getting that read through so that sales don't drop off after you sell that first book?
Sure, yeah. Is I'll answer your second question first. I can't make changes after the fact essentially because of the audiobooks being
Your
recorded
podium.
simultaneously. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that would break the synchronization between the Audible and stuff. So I don't do that part, which is kind of a nice thing to rid myself of that temptation.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the same thing like when I have
One less
because I
thing to
used to
think
do yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's one less thing to like occupy your brain space of, oh, should I go back and do
Yes.
this instead of writing the next book?
Yes, right. Which there's always a lot of temptations there. I get it. I indulge those plenty of times.
Yes.
But yeah, so I don't do that. Your other questions were, do I do anything to encourage read through?
Yeah,
Wasn't that one of them?
is there anything in particular that you ensure that you're doing? Because, to your point, you could run a book bub on book one, or even an ad on a Facebook ad on book one. Obviously, if no one buys book two, that $10 per one sale isn't going to get you too far.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely, there's some craft things you can do. For one thing, I think this series where you are very clearly telling a story of many parts, not just individual standalones that connect together, I think you're going to get better read through then. Unless you write something somebody really loves, right? Then they'll want to read everything. But so having sort of those through lines in the craft things, you could even do some cliffhanger sort of stuff. It just has to be tasteful cliffhangers.
Yes.
Like, tell the complete story and then give them something they need to know.
Yes.
Not stop at the climax and don't give them the rest of the book until book 2. Like, I would not encourage that.
And make them wait 3 years for the next one.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So I do try and do, especially book 1 into book 2, a cliffhanger or some seed that they want to see grow throughout the rest of the series or in book 2. And yeah, I mean, those series have done well sell-through wise, so I think it's at least somewhat successful.
Okay.
And then as far as like marketing wise, there's a lot of different things. I have different pricing strategies that I try. I cycle through different ones, different points. Often my book 1 will be cheapest. Of all my books, no matter really the length. It's just more about getting somebody into the series. Right now, I think, if I haven't changed it, Legend of Tall, book 1 is 99 cents, because I had a book bub and I was running a promotion for it. So then book 2 is $4.99, and I think the last one, like there's a third book, $4.99, and then the last one's $5.99, if I remember correctly. So there's a slight increase as you go through the series, and Ranger basically follows the same thing. Sometimes if I'm wanting people to get to book 2, I'll try doing book 1, book 2 sort of the same price, or book 2 slightly discounted, and then book 3 slightly more.
Right.
And then during sales, sometimes I'll do like 99-cent sale for the whole series just to get people through the whole thing. So yeah, there's different ways you can encourage that through your marketing as well.
Right.
You could also have Facebook ads that advertise the whole series, especially series sales. Those work very well. Those can, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to ask, do you then direct those ads to the series page, or are you still directing them to the first book page?
Yeah, I think... I'm trying to remember. I think for the ones where I'm advertising the whole series discount, I think those are series page at that point.
Okay.
For whatever reason, there's been different points when Facebook is like, series page? Nah. It's like the Drake meme, you know? They're shoving it away. They won't push those ads, and I'm not sure why. Because I would much rather advertise to the series page a lot of the time.
Because then readers can do a one click and buy the whole series on that page.
There's a lot of advantages to it. I mean, there's no ads as much on that page. It's all your books. You could see the whole series. Like, it's a great page, but for whatever reason, I haven't found, and maybe I need to try it again, but I haven't found that Facebook likes pushing those pages.
It's interesting that Facebook cares about what link you're advertising to, right? You know, especially if it's not affecting the click rate. You're running if you're running the exact same ad, but the link changes to your series page.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Facebook cares where it's going, as long as it's not, a spam site or something.
Yeah.
So I guess pulling back to your Facebook ad strategy, I know we kind of jumped around there, but yeah, I do enjoy talking about your Facebook ads because, one, I know I've run Facebook ads. It's been very haphazard. So I do enjoy talking about this just for my own benefit, to learn about what other people are doing that's working for them. So when you go in at the end of the week and you're reviewing your ads for what's working and what's not working, what are you looking for? How do you know what to change? Because you can look at an ad and are you changing the copy and the picture and the targeting? Are you changing one thing at a time? Are you doing some A/B testing? What is it that you're looking for so that you know that you're changing the right thing?
Right. Yeah. So I think the typical philosophy is to test one element at a time. So only change one thing at a time. I don't do that. And there's a very particular reason. It's Facebook's fault. Facebook doesn't like seeing the same image over and over. So it really won't push an ad, in my experience, with the same image more than once, essentially. Or like it'll tire out of that image pretty quickly. So even though you think by testing the same image and different copy, you'll be getting good data, in my experience, you just aren't. You're not going to get the data you want.
Yeah.
So how I kind of go about testing things is I use a lot of DCTs, dynamic creative tests, I think is what they're called.
Okay.
They might be called flexible ads these days,
Okay.
depending on what your
What
dashboard looks
iteration?
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, because they're always changing things for...
And it's
I
always different
swear.
from one user to the next too.
Yeah, I swear
Yeah.
they just do it to confuse you and make you spend money you don't mean to.
Probably.
I have a
yeah.
lot of beef with the Facebook ads dashboard, but anyway. So those DCTs, I'll call them, they let you use multiple images, multiple text iterations, multiple headlines, which are also an important thing. That's like the text that's immediately below the image.
Yeah.
I know you probably know that, but just for people listening.
For people
right?
who don't know, yes, of course.
Right. So those, it'll allow you to do like up to 5 of the text things and like I think 10s. And if I don't do that much usually. I'll do something like 3 to 5 images potentially, which might have like different reviews or something like that, but the same image. So like change one element about them.
Mm-hmm.
And then different text, which will try maybe different hooks or something like that, but keep a lot of the marketing sort of text. Be like, this starts the series Ranger of the Titan Wilds, get it for 99 cents. So keep that sort of stuff the same, but have a different hook at the top of it. And then different headlines as well, but similar across. Yeah, just 5 headlines as well.
Right.
And then Facebook usually has their own preferences, not necessarily what will sell best, but it's what engages people most. So you kind of have to roll with the punches there. At least the engagement stuff means you get lower cost per click. So whenever you have a ad that Facebook likes, you'll get a low CPC. And so you'll know that pretty quickly. And they'll spend your whole budget and stuff like that. But just because Facebook likes it doesn't mean you'll like it, because you might get no sales. I can have some images that are cool books and fantasy stuff, but not particularly relevant for my particular series. And those actually do really well cost per click wise, but no sales. So you want to be more specific in what you're using.
Yeah.
Have a direct link to your what's on your page.
Yeah, and to get, so Facebook is shuffling basically because you're using the dynamic content. Facebook is shuffling your images with the headings and the text so that each person's seeing a different combination of all of those things.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
And then they'll sort of select 1, maybe 2 of those combinations, and Facebook's like, oh, that's the one. Maybe it's the one, but it's the one that Facebook's going to select.
It's the one that's decided that day, yes.
Yes, exactly.
So how much of the, I know with Facebook's changing things all of the time, how much of the I know they're really leaning in now to the auto targeting with the AI placement and all that sort of thing.
Oof.
How much of that are you utilizing for their auto placement, and how much are you even able to select specific demographics anymore? Are you selecting your demographics, or does Facebook have you so tuned in at this point that it knows who to serve your ad to?
There is some of that, actually. You're right. I forgot that I've sort of trained Facebook at this point that I think it does know audience a little bit better. So that always, no matter what audience I'm saying to target, they're probably having that factor in, right? So there's an element of training, but even still, I try and put as many limitations and controls as they allow me to do. So I only basically advertise to the feed. So whether that's Facebook or Instagram. Sometimes I'll do the profile feed as well. I don't know that it makes a big difference, but definitely just the feed. I've never had, I don't think ever, success with their other placements.
So you're not doing stories, you're not doing the sidebar, you're not doing all the other things. That's still, because I know a while ago people were saying not to do that. That's still the case. You still get better results just on the feed.
Yep. And occasionally I test it just to see,
Yeah.
I've heard at different points, like the direct sales ads where you're using Facebook Pixel to track the sales and they can see more customer data essentially. I have tried those because I've heard that, Facebook will just select the right placement for you. Well, it still doesn't work. And then audience-wise, I find actually success with different things. So there's the highly targeted audience. I've sort of accumulated some authors that work pretty well for me. I'm pretty closely aligned to what I write. So I use that sometimes. Sometimes I just use generic fantasy books, and that has also worked at different points. And then I use the broad, sort of non-targeted thing as well. So it's just gender and age range. And it's a fairly generous age range that I use, like 25 and up. That has also worked at different points. So that's almost more just Facebook selecting your audience for you. And then I've also used Advantage Plus, I think is what it's called, where Facebook's doing all of it. And that has sometimes found success as well. I prefer the targeted stuff, but it just sort of runs out of audience at a certain point. So when I can't use the targeted stuff or just generic fantasy books, then that's when I'll go to the broader and A+ audiences.
So are you running through then, because you're saying you're trying all these different things, but it gets tired of your image pretty quick. Like, are you running an ad, like let's say an image on maybe a really targeted group and then running that out and then moving to a broader group? Is that kind of what you're saying that you're doing? Or are you just deciding, okay, I'm going to run one of these and one of these and one of these and see what works best?
Yeah, no, I don't think I usually reuse an image for a different audience type. I guess I occasionally have, if that ad has grown tired, I'll try changing the audience just like on that same ad, because that won't affect the ad itself if you do the ad set level changes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, certain ads. Don't totally take that. If you change the audience, that won't affect the engagement on that ad. So I've occasionally
So you don't
tried
lose the
that.
comments and likes and that sort of thing.
Correct, right.
Gotcha.
You can't change the placements. The placements will affect that. So as soon as you set placements, don't touch that. But you can change the audience, and that's fine. And the budget stuff.
Okay. So how long do you find, if you find an ad that clicks, how long are you able to run that ad before it tires out?
It's totally variable. I love the ones that run for months, but they're few and far between. Those I think have typically been for Legend of Tall, the Facebook people love my second book cover art. So I'll be able to use that cover art. It's like a Tree City sort of thing.
Okay.
It's a very good artwork piece. So I understand why. It's like characters are facing away, so it's maybe a little bit less of the same characters looking at you.
Right. Okay.
But I'll be able to place like a good review quote sort of in that middle part of it. So it's like a good composition for people when they're like scrolling, right? The text jumps right at you. Then you'll see the image and be like, oh, that looks like kind of a cool image. Then you'll see it's the cover art of book 2, which also probably helps with the sales as well. So those sorts of things I've been able to run for months for Legend of Tall. But yeah, it's very, very few ads last that long. It's usually, if they work, maybe a month. But if, like I'm cycling through weekly new ads oftentimes.
Yeah. No, that's good to know, because I think, like I said, there's two camps, people that assume that it's going to last forever and ever. They just have to, put it in there and let it go. And then so it's good to know kind of, a week to or a month on average is if you hit a good one. But
if you hit a good one, right.
But you're probably cycling the bulk of your ads out every single week.
Yeah, let's see. Do I cycle the bulk? I guess it depends on what I'm doing at that point, how much advertising I'm doing. I might cycle, I would say maybe 50% on a regular basis, but I might not be running that many ads at any one time.
Right. And I guess that's a good question. Yeah. Like how many ads on average, let's say, are you running at one time? Like, do you have a couple or, yeah.
So I have 2 series that I essentially advertise on Facebook, especially. So I'll usually have somewhere between usually 2 to 3 ads, or like DCTs usually, running per series. I'm not always these days running multiple countries. So usually that'll be like just US or just UK. But so yeah, about 6 ads at any one time.
Okay. Yeah. And then if you do decide to add countries, then you're adding another set probably on top of that, or do you target
different
the same
campaign?
Ad, just a different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So different campaign. I'm not sure how much it matters, but it matters to me when I'm evaluating stuff. So just to keep things fairly granular, it's more work, but I prefer having it as a different campaign item.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really cool. Yeah. I realize we're, getting to an hour now, but I do want to, so how much How much of your marketing effort does Facebook ads make, in your overall strategy these days?
Yeah, it's usually at least 50% of my ad spend. With the other ones being at various points, I've done a lot of Amazon ad stuff and had some success there as well. Especially with I think they're called brand ads. Brand ads I like because they'll like display at the top of the search. Plus, you can pair an image with it, so like that can be quite effective. But I'm doing less of the Amazon ads these days. I'm doing some BookBub ads these days as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They're coming back. So I like BookBub ads, especially for 99-cent books. I've had some sales happen for $2.99 books, but it feels like a lot of churn if you're doing full price books. So I'm not sure if I'll use them outside of sales periods, but I'm still testing.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So how about, even as far as, so that's kind of your marketing spend, but I know you're also running Kickstarter. I know you have a pretty big social media presence as well. How much of I was talking to Zach to CSD Amonte about kind of the buckets that, he has going on because he's got, stuff going on everywhere.
Yeah.
So, let's say, Facebook ads is kind of one of your, your main avenues. Like how much of that do you think is driving kind of your sales at this point? Is it still kind of in that 50% or is it kind of just one small piece of a larger pool for you?
Yeah, it's a big piece. It's not the only piece for sure, but it's been proven to me to some extent that my Facebook ads matter because at the periods when I weren't running I wasn't running many ads or lower spend or what have you, my sales were lower. So like I've been shown over the years that that's sort of a lot of the driver of my sales. So that's a big part of it. But I do see that social media increasingly, unless Facebook ads users have changed their behavior, but social media users are the ones I think that are getting more of the physical books. So these days, it's between 5 and 8% of my overall Amazon sales are print sales. And then, there's more on Ingram Spark and stuff like that. So like it used to be like 1 to 2%. Like it's a much bigger chunk. Mm. Yeah. So, and that has to be from like TikTok and social media. So, because that's when that changed.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely TikTok, I think, has had an impact on that.
Yeah.
But you're also running, some very successful Kickstarter campaigns.
Right.
And I know we didn't talk too much about that. I've had a few Kickstarter conversations lately, so I thought we would, focus on the Facebook a bit. But Kickstarter is a pretty big part of your strategy right now as well.
Yeah, fortunately, I've gotten myself in a position where I'm about to run a third Kickstarter while I'm still fulfilling 2 Kickstarters. I would not recommend this.
Wow.
I would not recommend this.
Yeah.
The only reason I can do it is because I'm working with Merrick Books and they're sort of handling more of the fulfillment side of things. Plus, we're like using a print run and stuff like that. So the process takes so long. It'll take like months and months to get a book printed.
So you're going, yeah. So for those who don't, for those who don't know, Merrick Books is a fulfillment company that's pretty big in the Kickstarter world for indie, self-published Kickstarters. So now is that partially because like, are you doing tip-in sheets for your signing pages? And like, Is that kind of partially the sending back and forth with the printer and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So there's tip-in sheets. There'll be sort of a dummy copy to proof it physically. And then I forget, I think those are, if you have to do multiple iterations, then that takes a month each time at least. So then there's the actual printing and shipping of them. Yeah. Between all of those steps, it can take quite a while.
It's a lot of work. Yes. But I fulfilled 2 Kickstarter campaigns myself, and that is not any fun either. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is fun, but it is so time consuming.
It's a lot, especially those when you're like first doing it. You're like, oh yeah, I have to order the boxes. Oh yeah, I have to like figure out all these pieces. You don't have anything set up, right?
Yes.
I'll be this new Kickstarter that I'm going to be starting up soon is another one I fulfill myself. So it's the 5th in the Ranger of the Titan Wilds series. And so that one, that's one of the big work ones, but at least I've done it before, so I know what's coming.
You know what you're getting into, yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny because when I did my second one, and somehow between the first and second one, you forget how much work it was the first time. And I think, but the next one I'll remember because, because I work full time as well, my
Yeah.
evenings and weekends are when I'm doing this fulfillment. And this is like, this is like
Yeah.
2 solid weeks of signing and packing and shipping books.
And
It's
when you're
just
not writing, right? It's eating your
when you're not
writing time.
exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the fulfillment strategy, I think, is a good one, especially if you're running a bigger campaign that you're able to do that for. Right.
Yeah, totally. It's made it like sort of painless almost to run those Kickstarters, right? Because
Yes.
the back end is where all the I mean there's some pain setting up the story page, like creating all the images, the video, but that stuff's kind of fun at the same time too.
Yeah.
The packing the books, there's something fun to it, but just because there's so much, it's so grueling at a certain point. Yeah.
And and everything else gets put on hold, right? That's kind of probably the bigger
Yes.
piece of it is that,
Yes.
like you said, you're not writing, you're not spending the attention that maybe some of your regular marketing needs and that sort of thing, because
Right.
it's just all consuming. Even it is a nice change, but at a certain point, you're like, okay, I want to get back to writing.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, right? So,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So really cool. So I think we'll probably leave it there because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but this was a fantastic conversation. Just to, kind of send us off, if you could give a piece of advice to maybe your younger self who is just starting to get into this, or someone who's maybe at that stage where maybe they have a few books out and they haven't hit that pivot point yet. What advice would you give to them, whether it's about Facebook or some other aspect of it?
Yeah. So for getting, I guess my piece of advice would be do something for marketing, right? Whether it's ads, it doesn't have to be ads at first. It can be like building your social media presence, but you have to do something or nobody's going to be able to know about your books, right? That's the only, like, that's the way of discovery. So commit yourself as much as you can to one avenue at a time. Build that up, become proficient at it, start getting a following there. Then you can add stuff on top of that. So for me, Facebook ads were less intimidating because I could kind of hide behind the ads. So that's where I started. Plus, you can sort of guarantee you're getting impressions through your marketing spend. But since then, I've added on social media and my email newsletter and stuff like that. So there are a lot of things you can do. Just select one, focus on that for a bit, then you can add on the other ones. So you don't get overwhelmed because it's easy.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And there's 100 different things that you could do, right? So I hear that. Don't try everything at once, because that's a surefire way to get so confused and deflated, really. If you're like, I have to do 100 things. Yeah, definitely been there.
You're stressed out. You're not writing. You're like not getting success because you're doing too many things. Yeah. For sure. And then be patient. Be patient with the one effort thing that you're doing, because you won't get results immediately most of the time. So stick with it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today, Josiah. This has been fantastic. I've enjoyed our chat so much and happy that we finally had the chance to chat face to face. It's been too long in coming, but I'm happy we made it happen.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Herman.
Yeah.
Been good talking to you.